Most aircraft carriers are described with the same old words: floating airbase, mobile runway, symbol of power. But the USS Gerald R. Ford and her sister ships don't just fit that description. They quietly change what a carrier is. Because the Ford class isn't built around planes, it's built around electricity. And that single design decision may matter more than stealth fighters, more than radar, and maybe even more than the air wing itself. For the first time in history, a supercarrier was designed not just to fight today's wars, but to power the weapons of wars that haven't fully arrived yet. And that's where things get interesting. Older US carriers like the Nimitz-class were engineering masterpieces of the Cold War. But deep down, they were still mechanical-era giants. Steam catapults, steam piping, steam-driven systems everywhere. Their nuclear reactors were powerful, but a huge portion of that energy was locked into turning water into steam to launch aircraft and run legacy equipment. The Ford class breaks that pattern. Instead of treating electricity as a support system, the ship treats it as the core resource, like fuel for a futuristic city at sea. The Ford's 2 nuclear reactors don't just make more power, they make a different kind of war possible. The ship generates roughly 3 times the electrical power of a Nimitz-class carrier. That's not a small upgrade. That's the difference between powering a large airport and powering a small city. Why does that matter? Because modern combat systems are no longer limited by explosives or fuel first. They're limited by energy. Start with the most visible change, the catapults. For decades, US carriers used steam catapults. They worked, but they were brutal machines. Huge, maintenance-heavy, and physically stressful on aircraft. Every launch was like getting rear-ended by a freight train. Great for sturdy jets, not great for lighter aircraft or delicate future drones. The Ford class replaces that with EMALS, the Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System. Instead of explosive steam pressure, EMALS uses precisely controlled bursts of electricity to accelerate aircraft down the deck. That means smoother launches, less stress on airframes, and more flexibility in what can fly off the carrier. But here's the bigger picture. EMALS is an energy weapon in disguise. It draws massive pulses of power in very short bursts. To do that reliably, the ship needs enormous electrical reserves, advanced power distribution, and the ability to handle sudden spikes without destabilizing other systems. In other words, EMALS forced the Navy to build a carrier that behaves more like a power grid than a traditional warship. And once you've built a floating power grid, you can plug in a lot more than airplanes. That's where the electric monster reputation really begins. Future naval weapons are hungry, not for ammunition, for watts. High-energy laser systems are already being tested across the fleet. These weapons don't fire shells or missiles. They fire concentrated energy at the speed of light. They can burn through drone hulls, blind sensors, or disable small boats without traditional explosions. The biggest challenge with lasers isn't aiming, it's feeding them. A powerful shipboard laser can demand megawatts of power. Older carriers simply weren't designed with that kind of electrical headroom. Adding such systems would mean painful trade-offs. The Ford class, on the other hand, was built with this in mind. Its electrical architecture leaves room for future-directed energy weapons. Lasers today, possibly electromagnetic rail systems tomorrow. The ship doesn't just carry weapons, it's designed to become a power source for weapons that don't fully exist yet. That's a fundamental shift. In past decades, ships were upgraded by bolting on new launchers or swapping missiles. Now, upgrades may come down to software and power management, the ship's ability to route, store, and unleash electricity. And it's not just about flashy future guns. Even the Ford's sensors feed on this power revolution. Modern radar systems are more like giant energy projectors than spinning dishes. The Ford class uses advanced active electronically scanned arrays. These radars don't just listen for echoes. They shape beams, change frequencies instantly, track more targets, and resist jamming. All of that takes electricity, lots of it. The result is a carrier that sees more, tracks more, and processes more information, because it has the energy budget to do so. You can think of older carriers as powerful bodies. The Ford-class is a powerful nervous system. Then there's the less glamorous side of the ship, the hidden systems that most viewers never think about. Weapons elevators, damage control, flight deck operations, internal transport. Many of these systems are redesigned with electric drive technologies and advanced automation. Instead of sprawling steam lines and complex mechanical linkages, you get more compact, digitally controlled systems. That does two things. First, it reduces crew workload. The Ford-class operates with hundreds fewer sailors than a Nimitz-class carrier. Fewer people maintaining steam pipes, fewer hands wrestling aging mechanical systems. Over decades of service, that's billions of dollars in savings. And more importantly, less human strain. Second, it makes the ship more adaptable. Software changes can optimize power use, prioritize systems in combat, and potentially reconfigure how the ship fights. This is what modern warfare looks like. Not just bigger weapons, but smarter energy management. There's also a survivability angle. In combat, ships take damage, systems fail, power gets cut. A ship built around advanced electrical distribution can reroute energy more flexibly than one dependent on centralized mechanical systems. That can mean keeping critical sensors or defenses online even after part of the ship is hit. Electricity becomes not just a performance advantage, but a resilience factor. So when people ask, why is the Ford-class so expensive? Part of the answer is simple. You're not just paying for a ship. You're paying for the infrastructure of future naval warfare. It's like building a data center instead of just a warehouse. The value isn't in the walls, it's in what the building can power. And this is where the Ford-class quietly changes the role of the aircraft carrier itself. Traditionally, the carrier was a platform to project aircraft. The planes were the real punch. Now the carrier is becoming something more like a floating energy hub, sensor node, command center, and future weapons platform, with aircraft as just one of several tools. Unmanned systems will likely grow in number. Directed energy defenses may reduce reliance on traditional interceptors for some threats. Electronic warfare demands ever more processing power. All of that points in one direction. Ships that can generate and manage massive electrical loads will dominate. Ships that can't will struggle to keep up. The Ford-class is the first supercarrier designed with that reality baked in from day one. It's not perfect. New technologies always come with challenges, testing delays, and growing pains, but the direction is clear. This is less about one class of ship and more about a turning point in naval design philosophy. For over a century, naval power was measured in guns, armor, and aircraft. Now, a growing part of that equation is measured in megawatts. So when you look at the flat deck of a Ford-class carrier, packed with fighters and helicopters, you're only seeing the surface. Below that deck is something just as important as the air wing. A floating power plant, wired for a future where the side that controls energy may control the battlefield. And in that sense, the most important weapon on the Ford-class might not be something that explodes at all. It's the electricity humming through the ship, waiting to be turned into whatever the next war demands.